Fabrics, and welcome to the Snowies Camping Show with Ben and Lauren. How are you, mate?
Well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening via your favourite podcast app or on YouTube, and jump into our Facebook group, Snowies Camping Banter, to join in any of the conversations for anything episode related or camping and adventuring and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. An exciting episode today.
Got an exciting episode today.
We rush to get it ready
had an
because
exciting
of some
morning.
Time zone mess ups. But
Some time zone differences and 5:30 a.m. text messages and the shuffle. But we're here in the office and in the recording studio, I should say, with Richard. I'm not sure what you prefer from Zempire. Which one is it, Rich?
All right, everyone calls me Rich, so yeah, all good.
Nice.
Yeah.
welcome. We should reiterate that the time zone mistake wasn't Richard's fault.
Not at all. No. Just for
I
people.
was responsible for the early morning text.
Yes, waking up in bed this morning, I was like, what's he doing awake at 3 a.m. New Zealand time? But no, it wasn't 3 a.m. New Zealand time. Anyway, so obviously we're chatting all things Zempire today. You got some really exciting things dropping at the moment, Rich, for your new 2025 season. But firstly, do you want to just give us a rundown of who you are at Zempire and what your role is?
Yeah, so I guess official title is founder and kind of general manager at Zempire. So Sophie and I started Zempire, freedom camping 2006, so a long time ago now, 20 years ago.
Wow.
So outside the general running of the business, my key focus is around product development and kind of head of product. So most of my time is spent on designing, developing, and bringing new product to market. So that's it.
Really,
the toilets. What else I have to do?
So really innovative brand. This must be the fourth episode we've had Zempire on, different people. The first time you've been on, Rich, but it's always been great chatting with you guys because your products are always really innovative and well considered. But the latest was products from 3 different categories here that have created a lot of stir in the industry. A lot of people waiting in anticipation. This week, one of these products has just landed. People have been waiting for them to land for ages, and that's what we're talking about today, these new products. But we'll jump in maybe, starting with the basic one, which is the Hexolite tables, which really have – I did the videos on them just the week or two ago, and they are really sturdy and really light. They've kind of changed how you view a camping table. Plus, you're catering for tall people like myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and this is a part of the mix that we're probably missing within our range. I think Zempire had a pretty good offering in the table offering. Bamboo kit packs did really well. We had some lightweight tables, but what we're looking for is a kind of a lightweight food prep option. We looked down blow molded tables, but we couldn't really find anything in the market that was light enough to kind of carry around and easy enough to use. So, the Hexolites have got, there's quite a lot going on as far as Hexolites to try to find this mix, but they're kind of targeting that usable coffee table size, but really you can use them right up to a high food prep area, large smooth surface. So light to carry around.
How exactly have you managed that? Because we have tested them out in store. I was one of the first people to pull them out the box, and of course we sort of got a sneak preview a bit earlier in the year, which was great. But to sort of see that finished product and that final product and be like, this is schmick. Lots of comments from staff coming through and things like that. So light, but they're sturdy and they're strong. And a lot of the time, I think when people are looking at a table like, Hexolite, lights in the name, how do you go about that and ensure you're still maintaining that integrity of strength and durability?
Yeah, a good question. We like the Hexolites use quite a unique board design. So we've got inside that Hexolite top there is a honeycomb shaped material inside, and it's a fiberglass based material. It was actually we found the material from the building industry actually when we were kind of researching materials, and it's material they use on the side of skyscrapers, kind of a fireproof board material which they use on the side of skyscrapers. So it was we took that core board, it's really strong and lightweight, and then we laminated 2 kind of fireproof boards on top and bottom. So it gives it a really rigid sort of top to it. It's because it's fireproof, you can use hot plates sitting on top of it is fine. I think it can hold like 300 or 400 degrees Celsius before there's any issue. So the normal part of the process is trying to find materials, and we just keep on flicking through materials of what is a good sort of option to work with, and then how do we kind of piece all those things together. The table itself was strong, and then I guess the key part for us was trying to get all the hinges and everything of the same sort of caliber. So we used stainless steel hinges all the way through. So that's kind of the part that holds that whole integrity and strength together when it opens out. And then to try to get the weight down, we put aluminium legs on. We're probably quite different from most other brands because we use quite high spec aluminium on all our tables. So we're 7 series aluminium on all of our tables. So it's incredibly rigid, really strong. It doesn't have a wobble to it. So we can get that lightweight with that strength. And as long as the goal for us was to have this table that you could leave outside. It wasn't going to, you can leave it out in most weather. There's nothing that's going to rust on it. There's nothing that's going to swell up and buckle on side. Yeah,
awesome.
So it's just kind of getting a combination.
You can genuinely put a hot pan straight on top of those tables.
Yep,
wow.
Correct.
That's awesome.
That's super heat resistant, those tables. So
yes, which is pretty. That's a massive point of difference, because if you're looking at sort of other camping tables that have that same functionality, you're sort of going with powder coated steel, which of course then is a very heavy option. The other cool thing that I like about the tables, which you've pulled across into your kit pack update, is the adjustment mechanism. Is that something like, or when I say adjustment, the leg height, did you come up with that yourself?
We tailored that adjustment size ourselves. We've got a little bit carried away, and we'll put on a whole lot of products coming out for 26, 27 now. So we might have gone a little bit overboard with that, but we really like that adjustment style, because a lot of the issues we had in previous tables we designed, we used to have some quite it was actually just a kind of a hardboard table which had a laminate top and bottom. It had round legs which had little latches on it. But if it gets condensation on the side and you put a whole lot of weight on it, at times they can slide up and down. So these ones have a really strong teeth structure to them. So even if they're a little bit damp, then there's no risk of them sliding and dropping, which is super important with food prep tables, right? The last thing you want is the table kind of flipping halfway through with a hot meal sitting on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We haven't made note of it here, but we'll just briefly mention it because there's more exciting products in the range. But there's also a new release of your Hangdome or your lanterns, which have always been really popular, but some exciting things there as well. But I reckon we should move on to the products you can see in the background there behind Richard.
Look at that the one on the top, like a star on a Christmas tree.
That's right.
We'll start with that, shall we? The Monstabeds, because these are the ones that landed just yesterday. And these are rethinking how you might view the airbed stretchers or inflatable, self-inflating mattresses, really. But maybe we'll let you introduce these, Richard. And
I just want to say that yesterday when I laid on one, it is more comfortable than my bed at home. I'm actually not joking about that at all.
Well, let's let Richard speak about how they came about it, because it's clearly not just a mat stuck on top of an airbed. There's more to it because they're comfortable and sturdy. I'll let you take it from here.
It was one of these projects which started out with a really simple concept, and we thought, this will be easy, right? But I guess if we just talk about what problem we're trying to solve, we saw heaps of people were using our monster mats on top of stretchers, and that's a really popular combo. It gets you off the ground. You still get the really beautiful comfort of the monster mat on top. So we thought, this is really simple. Why don't we just build in a monster mat and just put it on an airbed? Well, I opened up this can of worms with trying to solve this problem, which turned into, it literally has been a 2-year project for us trying to resolve this thing and make it work. So it became a lot more of a project than we were expecting in the first place. But I guess if I touch on what we were trying to solve and what the other alternatives were in the market at the time. So obviously the mat on top of the stretcher is a good combo. It's quite big and bulky, and the price can add up in that. But what the popular products that have been in the market before have been these double high PVC airbeds, which in the market. And the issue we've always found with those is that they are really nice and stable when you inflate them. And when you inflate them to a high pressure, you can sit on the edge of them and they're quite nice and stable, but they're like a rock to sleep on.
Yep.
And if you soften them up so that they're nice and comfortable to sleep on, then they're not stable anymore, and you kind of roll in the middle and roll off the side. So that neither of those two options really works very well. That they were made from PVC, so it had a horrible environmental story, and obviously lost heat into the ground as well. So we thought that double high airbed really wasn't the solution for us. But adding the mat, and obviously our monster mats have got a bit of a life of their own. They have a really strong following across all our markets, but particularly in Australia, they have a very, very strong following. So we wanted to utilize that a little bit more. And I guess the key outcome that we wanted was to have this beautiful 3D mat which sat on top of an inflatable airbed base. And the advantage of doing that was that if we have the soft mat, then we could keep the mat really soft and comfortable on top. We could pump up the base really hard, and so we could get this super firm base on the bottom of it, but you weren't affecting your comfort on the top at all. The monster mat had a really good thermal efficiency, so you keep yourself really nice and warm. There's no risk of you losing kind of all your hot air into the ground, and it gets you up off the ground, which is kind of what people wanted, this kind of comfort of the bed at home. Like you're saying, Lauren, you sit down set your bed up, you've got a side table next to your bed. It feels more comfy and homely than sleeping directly on the ground. So I guess the challenges that we ran into were that the initial concept was fine, but the challenge which we ran into was the manufacturing process just got incredibly difficult. And literally we were expecting to launch these last year. It literally took us a year to resolve, trying to work out how the machines would work together. We actually had to build a new machine in the mat factory to make these mats because there's no machine which could connect these things together.
Oh, wow.
So it has been a long process. The final result has been really good. And I guess for us, particularly for me, I've been living and breathing it for almost 2 years now. So it almost feels a little bit last year for me. I've kind of lost
old
the
news.
Lost the motivation.
old news, lost the shine of it. But I think that once people get on them and realize how comfortable they are, so Sophie and I, we go camping a lot. We normally use really kind of tape together prototype samples every time we go camping because we're the test dummies for everything. But we were both pretty excited when we used the prototype for the Monstabed. That was literally the first time we have gone away and had a flawless sleep. Like it was flawless. And like you were saying, it almost feels more comfortable than home. It's kind of surreal getting up in the morning and go, wow, that was a crazy good sleep. We were both really excited after last summer. We came back, told the team here, we have just had the most amazing camping trip and the best sleep we've ever had in our lives. You need to try this thing out.
Yeah.
So
does the double, I'm assuming because you can pump the bottom up really tight and then leave the mat on top fairly soft. I haven't tried the double. I've only tried the single. I'm assuming that whole airbed thing where one person's sleeping on it and someone else gets on and you go like this and then the whole air movement thing, is that minimal? How effective is that?
It's almost gone. Like
almost gone,
especially really that top soft, it's almost gone. Like for your viewers, I'll give your viewers a tip because most of the retailers who have been presenting this thing, in my mind, are not presenting it the right way.
I want to interrupt you, Rich, here with a little story really quickly, right? Because this might precede what you say. So yesterday in the office, Nicole, who's our warranty officer, she got an email from you guys to just be like, hey, heads up, here's a bit of additional information about the Zempire Monstabed, just to make sure there's sort of no confusion with this particular feature. Anyway, so she went downstairs, she laid on the bed or whatever. She came running back home. She's like, guys, you would have absolutely no you wouldn't believe me that these beds have this. It's like an air spring layer, and there are these things on the side, and it's like when you lay on it, the air comes out, but then if you move, it sucks it in, and it's just like this incredible like thing in the middle. It's just like I don't know what it is, but it equalizes everything, and it's so great. And so let's talk about that because that's boss.
Yeah. So I guess the issue that we've got with a lot of people is that they're nervous about inflating the base hard enough, and because of airbeds, you kind of leave it soft, and they're trying to leave the base soft, and then in some ways, a lot of people are pumping that top firm. But the way it was designed was to create that really hard base pillar system, so pump it up to almost a max, and then leave the top like a super soft. It has a really beautiful spring system to it. There is a bit of air chamber in between that top layer and that bottom layer, so it can let air come in and out a little bit more. So it gives a really nice sort of almost suspension memory foam sort of feel to the top of it if that top is left nice and soft. And we've moved stuff around in the foam construction of that mat because we're not lying directly on the ground. We can get a bit softer and a little bit more comfortable foam base in the middle of it. So, but yeah, the key is hard base, soft top, and that is the beautiful sleep.
And your little air spring layer, and it's just like a lasagna of glory.
We'll leave that one where it is.
You're right. That came straight out. That no prep. That was a filterless.
Spoke before you thought.
Yeah,
thought before you spoke. Sorry, but the pack size of these is marginally larger than your standard 10 centimeter double mat. But you're not looking at mat and stretcher combination. And if you start to combine that with the tents that we'll go on to soon, the total weight and pack size is, for the space and comfort that you get, is amazing.
Rich, before we move on, I just have a quick question there, because there's a lot of people who are probably listening who are like, yeah, that's great. I've owned an air mattress before, and you get one night out of it because it punctures so much. And, you're talking about having to pump or the design idea is to pump that up, get that real solid mattress base. What about that puncture resistance and durability and that hesitation from that side of things?
That's a really good point. That I should have come to that first, because that's that whole difference between the base that we have and the standard PVC airbed. They're completely different beasts. So the air base that we have on the bottom is a TPU air mat. It is not a PVC airbed at all. So it is the same material. If you imagine that the Monstabed is the same material. Well, the same construction material if we didn't have foam inside that monster mat. So it's a TPU base, really environmentally friendly. It has 150D ripstop sides to it, which is laminated through. So it is completely different from a PVC airbed. PVC airbeds, one, they don't have great durability, especially when they get cold. They can go quite brittle, and then that's when you can get them cracking and things like that. And they will slowly seep air through the PVC over time. So long term, you always have to reinflate. Whereas with TPU airbeds, they're 100% tight, so there's no chance of air leaking through. So yeah, it looks like an airbed, but it is actually effectively an air mat, a TPU air mat, which is welded to a 3D sleeping bag on top.
Okay, great. That's awesome.
Let's get into the most exciting thing, and these caused a real stir. And we'll start this conversation up by letting people know that we're talking about the tents in the background there, and they may look like a regular camping tent. But these suit everything from family camping right through to four-wheel drive touring, in my opinion. And if you're a four-wheel drive tourer or someone with a small car, I'm thinking Suzuki Jimny, and you're trying to get weight off your roof and you want to sleep in comfort, combining one of these up to a 10-person tent here with a Zempire sleep system or a Zempire Monstabed, you can fit this in the boot of a car at less or probably half the weight of a heavy-duty canvas touring tent. So even if you're a four-wheel driver, heavy-duty four-wheel driver, keep listening, because this could change how you set up camp. But Aerospeed tents, the Pronto is a really popular. We were just talking about this before. The Zempire Pronto has been a really popular tent for a while for family camping because it's ease of setup and durability and livability. This is the next step on from that. Is that right, Richard?
That's right. Yeah. So there's some pretty cool numbers between these two ranges when we go between the Prontos and the Aerospeeds. So I guess if I just give you a bit of background as what we were trying to do with the Aerospeed range and kind of our thought pattern with that design piece. There's the first tent range we came into when we designed a tent range where we just had a hard number. So we had a target weight for all three models. So we knew we wanted a 4-person, a 6-person, and 10-person, and we had this weight we were trying to achieve, which we kind of had set in stone for us. And then we just kept on reiterating these tents over and over again to try and get this weight and this pack size down. And it took a lot of times and a lot of kind of rethinking of how we do things. But the pack size between the Pronto a Pronto version and the Aerospeed version, the Aerospeed version is under half the pack size of the Pronto version, and it's a third of the weight of a Pronto version. So they're incredibly small pack size. They still have the same footprint, still have the same headroom and space, so usability. In fact, they've actually got more fly coverage than the Prontos did in the Aerospeed range. So yeah, so the stats between them, we were pretty excited when we got them to market that this was a real usable, easy carry, single person tent in the air range, especially in that family category, which really hasn't been touched before. People have tried really lightweight hiking air tents before, but all the family range tents were quite bulky and quite heavy in that space. So yeah, this was trying to push into this new market for us. So
what was your weight goal?
So in the US, our weight goal was 20 pounds, and that kind of came about from a bit of research we did. So we did a project with UCLA about 12. Well, it was almost 2 years ago now. Obviously, we're in a number of markets. The US market was a new market for us, and we did a research project with UCLA on US market and Australian market around consumers' attitudes towards air tents and what were the biggest roadblocks to someone buying an air tent. So they did a couple of thousand surveys, 500 interviews trying across New Zealand, across US and Australia, and the biggest feedback was weight and pack size. That was the biggest roadblock to buying an air tent over all the other features. So, and the hard line that we got to was this 20-pound thing, which is it's just on 10 kgs is our goal weight.
Wow.
And that proved quite difficult to do. Actually, it was easier on paper than it was in reality to try to get to that. 10 kgs. So,
and what
I'm sorry, Benji, but I just want to say I find it really interesting the results of that study that you're just talking about, in terms of people's barrier to purchasing a weight an airframe tent being weight, because it would be very rare that you would come across a framed family tent of 10-person plus under 20 kilos.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, so to me, it would be like, what, you know, if someone would happily go and buy a 20-kilo family framed tent, why wouldn't they go and buy a 20-kilo air tent? And I'm wondering if it's more so, is it because the technology is new and people aren't really, well, it's not new like as far as you and I are concerned, but I guess for the general camping population, it's still relatively new. Do you think it's as much about it still being a bit of an unknown?
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that. And I guess the other thing too is that we were looking at completely the full spectrum of campers. So campers, people who have never been camping before and they want to get into camping, I think a lot of those people have expectations around what they think a tent should be as far as size and weight. A lot of our customer base are quite regular campers, and so that they have a lot of experience in what their expectation is. But that's the feedback. The general feedback we got was, well, it wasn't just pack size. It was, how do I carry it to the car? Where do I store it at home? A lot of these people were in smaller houses and didn't have this massive space to carry around, which it was a surprising result for us, particularly the American side, because you think of those guys with big trucks and everything is bigger and kind of supersized, right?
Yeah.
But in this space, it definitely wasn't. So yeah, it was a surprising feedback from us. And what it showed to us was there is a potential market there of people who are not buying this because of this pack size, which we weren't really touching before, and that's shown that the Aerospeeds are flying at the moment. So there is obviously opening up a wider kind of customer group who this appeals to. So yeah.
I love how that. Sorry, Benji, but I love, I love how you were like, oh, that survey included people who've potentially never been camping before, and so this was their idea of what they thought a tent should be. And you're like, oh, let's just appeal to somebody's fantasy idea of camping as well, not just reality. So you've literally gone for what might seem like the impossible, and just been like, let's actually just do this.
Yeah, like carry on, Ben.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to let you speak at some point, Ben. Otherwise, you're not going to speak at all the whole time.
God damn, can you imagine the comments on this episode now? I'll just be quiet now for the rest of the show.
Obviously, 10 kilos was your goal, but the 10-person tent, though, just so people can get an understanding of where, because we haven't actually talked how much the tents weigh yet, but the 10-person tent coming at about 15 kilos and measures about 60 centimetres long by about 30 centimetres diameter packed. So that's a 10-person tent. I guess that's 10-person by the standard. So probably very comfortably sleeps a family of 4 to 6 perhaps. To give a comparison, I've got a heavy-duty canvas tent that weighs just over 20 kilos and just sleeps 4 of us. So and that's 2 meters long. So, you've done well. It's very exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
So I've said my piece now, as you were.
And I think part of this other piece, what not only was weight but at this level of, this is kind of our entry level into air tents in our series, is kind of the people getting into it for the first time, a lot of people, unless it's kind of a secondary tent. And we want that to be really a user-friendly, easy use experience. It's easy to put up. It's a single pole, goes up really quickly, but also it's easy to carry around. One person can do it. So it's kind of, it breaks down some of those barriers, hopefully.
I reckon we should jump into common questions that people ask, the naysayers or the people who are quite often critical of everything. It's always something's got to give. It's lighter weight, so something's been sacrificed. Can you talk into you've talked about solution dyed fabrics and all the things that you put into place to make sure you maintain that durability and reliability whilst bringing the weight down?
Yeah, like I guess there's as a high level for the Aerospeed series, there wasn't one particular thing which saved all the weight. It was a lot of different small things that we had to rethink and redesign how we made them. But probably the two most important things, first one was fabric, other one was pole. So on the fabric space, we typically in our range, as the range gets higher, we go to thicker fabrics. And because we haven't, in the past, a lot of our ranges, we haven't been focusing on weight and pack size. The thicker the fabric, the stronger inherently is, and it's quite an easy way to kind of solve that. So we had to rethink that for the Aerospeeds, and the way we did that was we went to a 75 denier fabric, which is relatively, but that's the lightest fabric that we do in our tent series. But typically 75 denier fabrics have some durability issues over long periods of time. They can get UV breakdown. They also have less tear strength than some of the heavier fabrics do. So we went down the path of developing a fabric called Duracore, and that fabric is a solution dye based fabric. And maybe I can explain it in an easy way of how the solution dye piece works and what the benefit is. So typically with a normal fabric, we would get the thread, get the fabric, and then we would dye it to the right color, and then we would coat the fabric and then sew it into a tent as a typical process. For solution dye fabric, we actually decide the color of the beads, the polyester beads that they use to melt down and make the threads. And then when the threads are made, they're extruded, they're all the right color, and then that's woven together, and then we coat and sew into a tent. So the key difference for that is there's a couple of steps we save. Firstly, we save the dyeing process. So we use about 10% of the water use than a normal dyeing process does, because every time you dye that fabric, you throw all that excess wastewater down hopefully into a nice storage tank and store it away, but it creates this waste. Whereas because there's no dyeing process with solution dye, it's already the right color when they make the fabric. We don't have a dyeing process at all. And the other thing too is that when we dye fabrics, after we dye, we heat it, and we heat it to try and kind of cement or set that dye onto the threads, and then we do it again. So there's about 3 processes of dye it, get rid of the water, heat it, dye it. And every time we heat it, you break down the polyester, so it becomes a little bit weaker each time you heat it. So by the time you finish the fabric and you've got a brand new fabric, it's already gone through a few heat cycles, and it's already kind of had a little bit of integrity broken down in a normal fabric. With solution dye, there's no heating. So you have a kind of a pristine thread, which is made into a fabric. So for its weight, it's incredibly strong. And the other benefit is because it's the same color all the way through, you have this consistent color, and you don't have any UV resistance. So you don't have any UV damage. When the UV breaks it down, it doesn't break down the outside thread and then go to the core, because it's the same consistency all the way through the thread. So it's more environmentally friendly. It's about twice the tear strength of a normal fabric, a normal polyester fabric. And obviously with us concentrating on weight, it means we can use a lighter weight fabric and get the benefits of strong and UV resistant, environmentally friendly. The 75D that we use on our Aerospeeds is only slightly less tear strength than the 150D that we have on our Evo series, and it's half the weight.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was a key difference for us. It's a step that we are taking proactively as a brand from an environmental perspective. We're trying to think of smart ways to do this and to have less impact. And so this is kind of a key direction, and we'll see more of that in our tents. So that the fabric was the first piece, and I guess the other key part was the poles. And air poles are easy to use. They pump up quick. They're stable when they're up, but inherently they're quite bulky. It's always been the case. We've never, in the past, we've never said that an air pole is smaller pack size than a traditional pole tent. We just say it's easier and it pumps up more and it's more stable in the wind. So to try to get those poles down, we had to redesign how we made the poles. A key part of it was that we wanted to reduce the size of the poles. So they're quite wide at the moment. We made them to a smaller diameter. To be able to keep them stable, we had to pump to a lot higher pressure. And so we've had to use a lot of new fabric techniques, sewing techniques to increase the pressure of these tents. And we're kind of out on our own. So just to give you an idea, the burst strength of a typical air tent pole is about 25. Our minimum is 30 psi as our burst strength. It pumps to about 7 psi. Our burst strength for Aerospeeds is between 50 and 60 psi. So it's a lot stronger. It means you can pump to more pressure, get stability while keeping the weight down.
And you need 7 for the tent, right? When you pump to 7.
Yeah, so a normal tent is 7. Our Aerospeeds, they pump between 10 and I think it's 12 or 13 psi. We pump above 10 psi depending on the size of the tent. So they do sit about 5 psi higher pressure than our Evos and our Pro series and the other tents in the range.
Can I just ask a question about the UV? It was a really interesting point you made there that, once UV damage starts in a tent, you can't stop it. You can't reverse that. And yet we have our tents set up in the sun for days after days. Like we can't avoid that. So that's a really interesting point you make. But quite often we got around, or people who are concerned about UV damage would look at a canvas product because the canvas has better UV resistance than synthetic in general. Can you talk to the comparison there between UV resistance and strength of a canvas, which nowadays is generally a polyester or polycotton canvas versus it was polyester, wasn't it? The polyester for the Aerospeeds.
Yeah. So the if we talk to our range, and we have canvas tents in our range as well, through to canvas is still the most durable in UV light than of all of our series. And there's a few things around that. The cotton and the polyester mix that protects itself. So you don't get as much damage on the you don't get as much damage on the polyester. There's a lot of cotton which is wrapped around that, and that kind of protects the polyester, so the polycotton thread. So each polyester thread is wrapped in cotton, and that's what keeps it waterproof without needing seam sealing. And the other thing is that the canvas is just thicker. So you start out with a really thick fabric. That breakdown over time is less noticeable because you're starting out with a fabric which is probably 3 or 4 times thicker. So I guess, like with pretty much every category in our range, there are simple ways to solve these problems and there's hard ways. The simple way to solve UV damage and durability is just make things thicker. And if you don't worry about weight and you don't worry about how hard it is to lug around or how durable it is, you can just make it thicker. The challenge is to make it durable and lightweight and kind of easy use on that space. So it's the solution dye story is the best solution for full polyester thread fabric at the moment. It's much better UV resistance than nylon. Nylons have inherently really bad UV resistance to them. That's why most fabrics are using silicone coating on the outside of nylons to try to protect from that. So yeah, the polyester at the moment, as it stands, polyester solution dye or Duracore fabric is the best solution for UV resistance. If you start putting silicone coatings on, silicone coatings will work, but they need to be retreated. So over a long period of time, you'll need to retreat your silicone coatings over long periods of time.
Good one.
So another thing that a lot of brands neglect or overlook when they're making a product is the storage bag. Now, you mentioned before about when you did your UCLA sort of studies and whatever, it was also portability and how it's carried and things like that, which is one thing. But I really love your storage bag and I want to know how on earth you came up with it because it's so different.
I'm really proud of my storage bag. That's my best
you should
bag
be.
I've made. Yeah.
You should be.
I really like that. I really like the process of kind of putting everything having its right place and putting it all back in tidy spot. And I've always been a little bit annoyed with our bags that it feels like you're just chucking everything in a big kind of duffel bag and just hoping for the best. So we actually started. It actually worked around the other way. We started working out how we could compress the tent as small as possible. So we just had this big wrap which went around the bag to try to compress it down. That was an original goal for the carry bag. So there's 2 parts about carry bags which from a brand's perspective are really hard to manage. Firstly is people want to see a really small carry bag. When they're buying a tent, they want the carry bag to look as small and tight as possible. But when they use it, they want it as big as possible. And you won't believe how many complaints I get about our carry bags being too small if I get that spec wrong. So you've got to kind of balance out these 2 things. So we wanted a big bag, which you could easily stuff it into, but you could compress it down and get it really tight and small. So we had this big compression strap, and that's when we started going through, well, this is a perfect spot to start using my tidy little pockets and keeping everything in its place. And another difference with Aerospeeds versus other tents is our pump breaks down. So we unscrew the base, we unscrew the handle, and that was to try to get pack size down as small as possible as well. So we developed a new pump design for that. That meant that we could kind of get the different components in the carry bag in a neat and tidy area. And so, it came out really well. And I think that feedback from consumers has been, well, there's definitely a certain type of customer who they're more excited about the carry bag than they are about the tent. They kind of overwhelmed by these nice little pockets which sit in the front side. So, it's definitely a good bit of feedback and something that we're going to continue to look at for other models as we go forward.
And I just want to pause for a minute because I know that a lot of people listen to our podcast in an audio version only. Not everyone watches it on YouTube. So if you haven't already, check out our videos on the Zempire tents or Zempire's videos as well. But essentially, imagine a like one of those roll top stuff sack bags, but it's super huge, and that's where your tent goes. But on the outside, it's like a tool roll, and there are like mesh pockets, and your poles and your bits and your pieces go in there, and then that wraps around the outside of the bag, and you can cinch it up. But the other great thing about the bag is that it's not a perfect cylinder; it's like a taper. So, that's what I found, because when we were filming the Aerospeeds and we were doing the 10 and we were checking the radar because rain was coming over and we were like, we're going to get the video done. And then we got the video done and it started to patter and we had to pack the tent up really quickly. And I was just like, it's not going to go back in the bag. It's not going to go back in the bag. And I think we had folded it and rolled it and we only had to unroll it and then just roll it again one more time. And it just went in as a dream, and it was mostly because of that tapered gusset in the side and then the ability to sort of cinch it back up after. And I was just like, man, that's so good. Like, it's so good.
That is your tip of the day. And we get lots of people saying about putting our tent back in the bag. With air tents, the key for rolling up air tents is roll them twice.
Yeah, right.
First roll to get out the air, because there's a lot of air that sits in. First roll to get out the air, then roll it up nice and tight, and you'll get in the bag every time.
Okay,
so
nice.
That is the key. Do the double roll, and we've started to put that into instructions now, so that it makes things heaps easier. But
same with all inflatable things, right? Yeah, self-inflating mats. Roll it up, seal the valve, unroll it, do it again, and it goes in the bag really easily. So
yeah.
A good segue. You're talking about the videos. There's quite a few comments on there, and it's usually the people who are looking for things to be critical about. But I know one comment was, because you can get accessories, so you've got kind of the cutout. People can see the picture in the background. You've got that cutout on the fly on the side, but the window inside is waterproof. But you can add a wall on the side. And I know someone said, "Oh, that's an incomplete tent because it doesn't have that the enclosed wall on the side." But I'll let you talk to it. But I'm making an assumption that you're trying to get the weight down right, and you can add the extra on if you want. But
there's two things at play there. One is 100%. We're trying to get the weight down, and like I said, we went through all avenues to try to get that weight as small as possible. But from a brand's perspective, we have a unique challenge from a design piece for the brand, is that we want to create products which are compatible in multiple markets. So we're in New Zealand, Australia, UK, Korea, and the US. Each one of those markets has a little bit of a different take on what they expect and want from those different tents. So we have found that making our tent a little bit more customizable by putting walls on and doing things like that makes it a lot easier for our tents to fit in with what these different markets and different environments need. In New Zealand, most people will buy a wall just because we get a lot of rain, and it is a comfort factor to be able to have the wall down and have the internal window open so that you can get ventilation in, but still having protection from the rain with a wall on. But obviously in areas in Australia where all they care about is ventilation and just trying to keep cool, the last thing you want to carry around is another full wall set to block in the side of your tent, and it adds to weight and it kind of adds to the other side. So yes, it is about getting weight down, but it's also about making the tent a little bit more tailored to the environment that you're camping in. So you're not taking excess stuff with you that you're not going to use.
Can that same thing be said for your configuration of doors and things, just to try and make it usable for all climates?
Yeah, so the configuration of doors was a little bit more unique for Aerospeeds. Aerospeeds probably had more of a focus around weight, and we definitely made some decisions around door configurations from the weight perspective. The Aerospeeds do have a lot of ventilation, so they've got big windows on the side. There's loads of ventilation at the top. We decided for example, the back door of the Aerospeed, we didn't need a double layer door. It adds a lot of weight for the double zip and the double fabric because there's already loads of ventilation flowing through from side to side and through the top. So a few of these decisions were made particularly for the Aerospeeds because of that weight factor. And as we go up through the range, we've got tents in our range which have full noise features. If you go up into our Pro Series range, every kind of additional feature or little bit of feature you want is on those tents as you go through. So if you don't care about weight, then keep on going up because there's lots of space. So yeah.
What about, sorry, one more quick one. What about darkroom fabrics? Because darkroom never used to be a thing, and then it became a thing, and now everyone's like, well, why doesn't it have darkroom coatings on it? I'll say darkroom, but blackout,
We have quite a clear stance on darkroom. So, and this might segue into a few other things like around roof covers, stuff like that, because these two things are linked for us from a brand's perspective. So, rightly or wrongly, we have made a decision on a brand up until now to steer away from darkroom material, darkroom coatings or blackout coatings as brand. And the decision was purely around durability. So we didn't feel like the technology was there to get long-term durability out of those blackout coatings, especially when packing and unfolding over time, that we were comfortable with. And we decided that we were better off to use coated roof covers, which could kind of create the shaded environment, but either they could be replaced or you'd be taken on or off if you wanted to, rather than having it built in the tent. Also, this is probably a personal thing, and I'm going to get crucified by your listeners.
Oh my
for
God,
this,
I really hope that we're on the same page here and you're going to say what I was about to say in a couple of minutes and be like, oh, people are going to hate this, controversial. Go.
I don't like true full blackout bedroom rooms when I go in. I don't want to be sitting in a cave. I want shade, and I like the block shade from the sun, but that shade feeling is what I want, and especially in the living area of my tent, rather than sitting in the tent with a flashlight trying to find out where you are inside the tent. So that's my, there's not the driving factor why we haven't done it, but that's my personal preference, that I feel that the shade factor or the shade experience is a nicer experience to spend time in with your tent. That's different from not waking up early in the morning, and we are investigating options around keeping the bedroom space dark for the sleeping area, but particularly in that living space, our tents are configured so they often have an internal living area. So that's more of a shade space for me than a true blackout. But
I quite like waking up with the sun in the morning.
I was going to say,
is that what you were going to say?
My
Same
opinion's
thing?
probably a bit more hardcore than yours, Rich, and I don't know if you are actually hardcore and just trying to be diplomatic because you're representing a brand here. But for me, it's like I've always hated the darkroom tents. I've always been really irritated by them because the whole premise of them is to like block out light and help you to sleep in longer and, you know, whatever. And I'm like, but that's not the point.
Get up and watch the sunrise.
You're getting up, you're going out into nature. You're literally going to sleep in a material shelter in the middle of the bush. If you want to sleep in, stay home. Get up with the bush, enjoy your circadian rhythm, enjoy your light, get into nature. It's for rest, it's for recuperation, it's for recalibration. Don't buy a darkroom tent. But on the same token, I do understand that a darkroom tent might be the difference between a person choosing to go camping and not. And I would rather people enjoy camping and enjoy that activity with a darkroom tent if that's what works for them over choosing not to camp at all.
I think you're under the right thing though, Richard, to be able to create a dark, just one portion of the tent that's dark. So especially if you want kids, you got young kids and you need a dark space for them to sleep. I can see the versatility in that, but not the entire tent. We're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
And I like that. For us, there's two parts dark room for me. There is obviously keeping the bedroom dark, but there's also the temperature difference that they do reduce temperature. And we feel like we get a better result with roof covers for reducing temperature than we do solutions. So that's the path we've gone down at the moment. And I feel that is a dramatic difference when you put a roof cover on, the temperature inside. So that's working quite well from our customer perspective.
Sorry, Benji, you can go.
I was just going to say, just on the accessories, roof, there's the walls, the roof cover. People always like to have a simple setup and pack down. The question is, can I leave it attached when I pack it away?
Yeah, and so the answer is yes, you can leave it attached. The only caveat to that is you need to watch out for condensation. So particularly with roof covers, if you've got condensation in between, you don't want to be packing it away and packing in condensation inside your tent. So as long as it's dry and you don't have any condensation, absolutely you can leave it on.
Same with the
very
walls,
good point.
Walls as well.
Same with the walls.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, exactly. You got walls which, if they're pegged out, like if we talk about Aerospeeds, the walls will peg out on a little bit of a bow outside. You'll get grass area. If you have a fly over top of the grass area, you get condensation on that wall. You just need to make sure they're dried out before you put them on. And I guess the other piece of that, which isn't exactly on that topic, but is on roof covers. We suggest taking roof covers off when it's super windy. And when that's not what they're designed for from our perspective. What they're designed for is a really hot day and you're trying to cool your tent down. If it's cloudy and it's rainy, then we suggest having them off. That's probably the only other piece.
And there's enough room. Sorry. I was going to say there's enough room in the storage bag with the accessories to fit everything in.
Yes, there is. Cool. So I'm just trying to think through what. Yes, you can fit all of those pieces in. I guess we kind of have this connecting story which is limitless, where you start connecting onto shelters and you start connecting on all that space. But actually, the true connect pieces of the tent, they can all fit in.
Yep. Good one.
And if you got for an Aerospeed, if you get issues with rolling inside your bag, you can easily take the pump out of that, have that on the fold-out cover, and then you buy yourself a whole lot more space inside the carry bag.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So there's options.
So you guys are probably one of the only brands, or certainly one of the only brands that we interact with or deal with regularly that do a roof cover for your tent. Have you always done roof covers? Because I feel like they've been an accessory since, well, as long as I've known Zempire, which isn't the whole time, but.
Yeah, it was really early on. I think we started out with air tents in about 2015, 2016. It was probably a year or two after that we started bringing roof covers out. So it was pretty early on. We've been doing them for probably 8-9 years for roof covers. It is roof covers. Like, we get a lot of influence from our international markets. Roof covers were a big thing in UK. We were the first to kind of introduce them into New Zealand and Australia. We brought them into our UK range first. And we did that with quite a few different products. We see what's working in different markets and if there's new stuff that we can bring into our other markets. But yeah, we've been doing it for a long time.
So I can't imagine in the UK that they would have scorching heat that requires a roof cover. So what's the sort of function for the roof cover in other countries?
So it still is around heat. It's still, I think
they find it hot when it reaches 20.
I'm probably going to step on UK customers' toes here, but their heat tolerance is probably less than ours.
Yeah.
So if it gets to a 30 degree day, then they're wanting to cool the tent down. Also, UK camping, they spend a lot more time inside their tent when they're camping than we do in Australia and New Zealand, where we're kind of more outside in the gazebo. They're in their tent all the time. So yeah, roof covers are quite a big thing in the UK market.
Yeah, right. I really, I just a thought that I've sort of thinking as we're talking is I really like the idea that you guys have around making a singular product that's applicable for all markets, because I'd say with some other brand tents and things, and especially because of our presence on YouTube, one of the most common questions is, how can I get this tent in America? How can I get this tent in the UK? These brands have an established market here, but they don't sell this tent, and I don't understand why. And I think that's a really great thing that you guys are doing with that.
I think it takes a lot. I think the reason a lot of brands don't do it is because it takes a little bit. There's an extra design step to try to consider how do you make this work in multiple situations. Whereas if you're just designing for a singular environment market, it's a little bit easier design process for a lot of the products. So, but yeah.
As you touched on it before, but you've got connections to the tent, so you've got links, and you've always had that, so you can link your tent to your aerobase
ecosystem.
An ecosystem. Your aerobase being your gazebo. You've got the same links for your Aerospeed. So we've done an actual video. You guys come over and help us get it done, but we've done a video of a walkthrough of how that can work. So I just want to make sure that listeners know that these work with that link system as well. And if you want to join up all your shelters, you can do with the Aerospeed, or pretty much all of Zempire's shelters, right?
You can tell all your listeners, or I'll tell all your listeners that was the biggest feedback we got from the Pronto series. And I got you wouldn't believe how many emails and messages I got about not being able to link onto our aerobases for the Pronto series. So
yeah, we got that too. Don't worry, you weren't alone.
There you go.
I sent a market-wide apology, and we have rectified it for Aerospeed. So yeah.
The very cool thing I love about your range is that you want to go camping with a couple of your mates. You all have Zempire tents, but they're all different. You can connect them all to a singular aerobase, and that's what I think is really cool.
Yeah, don't have to go outside if the weather's bad.
Yeah.
It's so cool seeing them in the campsite. Like Matt and the marketing team we do a Zempire road trip where we go around roadie, where we go around all the campsites. We give out some goodie bags for everyone who's Zempire tents, and the setups and the kind of creative sort of link systems that people do are pretty impressive to see. Cool. It's cool to watch. So. Awesome. Yeah, that's a nice part.
Quick question. Obviously, a lot of your Aerobase, previous Aerobase ranges moved to Legacy, and you've got the Aerobase 3 in the Pro and the Standard now. Is there any compatibility with the current Aerospeed link to Legacy models?
So if the size of the Aerobase is the same, so if you're talking about an Aerobase 3, it doesn't matter what year or version of Aerobase 3, that door shape and door length is exactly the same size through every model that we've made. So that's reverse compatible all the way back to when we first started.
Okay.
That is not the case with the Aerobase 4 and the Aerobase 2.
Okay.
Those will not link on, but the Aerobase 3, and that's part of the reason why we consolidate the range down to one size of Aerobase, was so that we could make everything compatible. So yeah, if you've got an Aerobase, doesn't matter what Aerobase 3, doesn't matter what it is, a link will link on.
Okay, that's great.
Oh, I want to move on to just ask a few questions about pumps. Have you got anything else you want to ask about tents before we do that?
No, I think I'm okay. Rich, anything you want to talk about you haven't mentioned already?
I think, I guess the only other thing I'd just touch on the Aerospeeds was that feedback process that we got, and we got a lot of feedback from people, particularly around Prontos, and that kind of information loop that came through, and we spent a lot of time going on through your forums, things like that, and other camping forums. There's a few Zempire fan pages which we go on, so that's a really handy sort of feedback loop for us. People are very honest about our products when they don't like it, so they tell us pretty quickly. So and it's a really important close of the loop sort of piece for us, that we can kind of find out what's working, what's not working in the market from a distance without actually influencing that piece. So and yeah, your forum and blog is another really key piece of that, the Snowy's Banter blog. So yep, there
you go. Zempire's listening to your comments no matter where you put them. It's good to know.
Rich, do you personally have design like a design background at all? Because a lot of your gear obviously is very well considered. It's aesthetically, your color range, like, you know, it's modern, it's visually very different, it always is very innovative, but you're just a camper, right?
Yeah, just a camper. Yes, I don't have design background. I've been doing product design for a long time, so for about 20, 25 plus, but not formal training, just camper, just learn on the job, see how we go.
That's awesome, mate.
So much more than just a camper.
And you know, obviously I didn't mean to be disrespectful at all from that perspective, but I think, I think the difference is that being, and we're the luxury, being kind of a owner operator brand, where we still can, we've got a little bit longer chain to be able to kind of do those last 10% and those little finishing touch details. So that the company structure being kind of still founder basis makes things a little bit easier in that space, rather than being too corporate and just ticking a box. I'm curious to know how many people are like, oh, I don't know about that, Rich, that's a bit ugly, and like, too bad, that's what it is, because I think it looks great.
I tell you what, there is a definite phase in the design process where I don't show anyone.
Okay.
Because so we get feedback in, but there is a certain point where you're committed to it. There's no point getting feedback from this point onwards. You're just going to have to go with it and make it work. So you've got to back. So you can't get to about halfway, and then from that point onwards, you're just going to back yourself, and there's no point getting any feedback from that point onwards. So
awesome.
I love that.
So, let's just touch quickly on accessories. So I mentioned you've got pillows. You can see a little box in the background there. Your chill pills, really awesome pillows. But I want to touch on pumps too, because if people are going down the path of pumping up their tent now, they're pumping up their mat. They're thinking I need a pump for this and a pump for that. Tents come with a hand pump, a double action hand pump. The airbeds don't come with a pump, but you brought out a monster pump that we'll use for that. Is there one? Can you use the tent one for the airbed? Like, can you just take one pump with you, or do you need to take a pump for each device or each item?
The key difference is the pressure that the pumps pump up to. So if we take Monster Pump, for example, that has a pressure of about 0.75 psi. So that is enough to pump up the base of the Monster Pump and get a Monster Bed, get it really firm and still be able to pump up the top. We don't want to make our accessory pumps pump too high pressure, because otherwise you can do damage to, say if you're pumping up a monster mat and you have it pressure up to 20, you can do all sorts of damage and delaminate. So that pump there is specifically designed for high airflow to pump up the base, but also it has a really strong deflate function. So it can suck air out really strong to get the compression size of monster beds and monster mats down to a small pack size. So it's actually the two selling features, I would say that's almost a stronger one, is that the deflate mode to really suck that air out, so it has a strong motor, but it's nowhere near enough to pump up a tent. So I know we're going to get people trying, and you will be able to put in a little bit of air, but it's going to stop pretty quickly. The tent needs about 4 psi to even get its shape, and it needs about 7 psi to go up.
Okay.
We have a supercell pump, which is an electric pump, 12-volt pump, which will pump air tents up to 20 psi, and we have a number of pumps in development at the moment. So this time next year, we should have a series to talk about as far as that goes.
Like
but at the moment, the Monster pump is for Matt.
Okay, nice.
But you set the Aerospeeds up. How many pumps did it take with the double action pump?
Well, I'm actually pretty sure that we timed it with like a timer, and because, you know, in your catalog, you guys like 2 minutes to set it up, and I'm like, yeah, like you say that's rubbish. And, you know, like I gave it a fair crack, and I reckon it was like 1:47. And that was me giving it a fair crack and not stopping. So I think that, you know, like 2 minutes is reasonable. You know, if you want to have a leisurely stroll, maybe 3 max, but it certainly is not much time.
You can do a bit and come back, do a bit more, come back.
Yeah, or, you know, be like, you know, I've done halfway, now it's your turn.
Like, get the kids to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, can I get a pump to do it? But it really doesn't take that long. It's not an arduous process.
And all the pumps we've got in the range, even our supercell pump, it will take longer than pumping it with the hand pump. It is easier. Yeah. And so particularly some of our big tents. So if you look at our TXL Pro and these tents, we have all the poles connected together. So it's a single point inflation. That works really well with the pump. You can just plug in supercell, let it do its thing. You go and peg the corners up, the tent will inflate by itself, and then you can sit down and enjoy. But if you've got pump tubes which don't have much air volume, so Aerospeeds, it's a 1 minute job to inflate an Aerospeed for the actual pumping section. It isn't long, so or 2 or 3 minutes depends how fast you're expecting to pump. But yeah, so there are. It is an easier way, and obviously there's people who don't have the physical capacity, mobility to pump, and that's kind of one that we're really conscious of, that we want to make it as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. But it's not a fast process; it's just an easier process with an electric pump.
Yeah. And I do probably just a little funny story here that I'm happy to throw myself under the bus on. When we did first do the run on setting up those Aerospeed tents, and I was like, right, Larry, 2 minutes, like, let's see. And then we put the timer down, and I'm like pumping, and it's like 2 minutes goes past, and I'm sort of like, but I'm still pumping. And then I'm just like, it sort of goes to like 3.5 minutes or something, and I'm like, man, these guys are false advertising. It's like, I think something's not quite right here. And so it's like got 2 valves, and I didn't notice that, and the back one was empty. I'm just furiously pumping away, and it's all just running out the back. And then, of course, doing that up the back, and then going straight into pumping it up after furiously pumping for like 3.5 minutes. Still did it in under 2 minutes.
You can use that hand pump to pump up your Monstabed as well, right? It's the same valve, Boston style valve.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Monstabeds come with a little adapter which will connect onto that 360 valve, so you can chuck your double action pump onto it. You do need to be a bit careful with pressure, because, like I say, there's a level of pressure for airbeds, but it'll pump that up pretty well.
Awesome.
Well,
I'm out of questions.
Yeah, I'm out of questions too. I reckon that's been a really great chat. Rich really appreciated that. I mean,
that was easy.
Yeah, great. Nothing to worry about.
No.
It's always an easy chat with it, guys. You got answers, and you've thought about everything, and you got answers to everything. It's like, even though I would say that you and I probably feel like we're fairly across the new range, and that there's still new stuff that I learn, and I really appreciate that. So that's I've got some
thank
notes
you so
here.
much for that, Rich.
Things to mention in videos.
But I think also we're what are we at now? Just over an hour. So that's a nice long episode for you guys if you've made it this far in amongst our sort of shorter 10-minute drops that we're doing weekly now. But yeah, just a very big thank you, Rich. Thanks so much for joining us. It was short notice, and I really appreciate you making the effort to be here today.
I'll apologise for the 3 o'clock in the morning text, but
it's not your fault.
Not your fault at all. That's fine.
Honoured to be on. So thank you guys for having me.
No worries.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay,
all right,
catch you later.
Another awesome chat with Zempire. That was really good.
Yeah, really appreciated that. So don't forget to join into the conversation wherever you're listening to your podcast, and subscribe. Jumping onto our Facebook camping banter group. Rich mentioned before earlier in the episode that Zempire are sort of on that page and can see conversations and chatters going around Zempire. So I'm sure if you've got any questions there that we can't answer, they'd be happy to jump in. Anyway, that's about it for another episode. Getting close to the end of the year now, but we will see you guys all next week.
Thanks for watching.
Catch you later.
Time.